Almighty God, who, in thy infinite wisdom and providential goodness, has appointed the offices of rulers and councils for the welfare of society and the just government of man, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of such important trusts in the Commonwealth of Dominica. Let thy blessing descend upon us here in this Parliament assembled, and grant that we may, as in thy presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the good of those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge, all which we ask in the name and for the sake of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. House resumes and debate continues. Yes, Honorable Minister George, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to you, good morning to my esteemed colleagues, and good morning to our listeners on the various media platforms. I also want to say a special good morning to the most wonderful people in the world, Mr. Speaker, the wonderful people of Penville. I know that they're listening this morning. It's always an honor and a privilege for me, Mr. Speaker, to stand in this honorable house, and I too want to wish you congratulations on being reappointed or re-elected, as chair of this honorable house. I wish you all the best in your new position, and also I want to commend the Deputy Speaker also. Mr. Speaker, if I may read notes.
Yes, permission granted.
Today, in front of us, we have a draft supplementary appropriation bill, Mr. Speaker, outlining the expenditures we incurred as a government over the fiscal year 2021-2022, Mr. Speaker. And I must say that all our prolific members on the government side have done a very good job in outlining all the measures in this bill. The same can be said for the members on the other side of the House, Mr. Speaker, who seem more focused on making demands on the state, Mr. Speaker. And as far as I'm concerned, some of them made no contribution, no valuable contribution to this bill in front of us, Mr. Speaker. But the long and short, Mr. Speaker, is that every single expenditure outlined in this bill tells a story of ensuring that people remain safe in this changing environment, a story of advancing our food security efforts, a story of empowering young people, a story of advancing education and sports. And when we put all these stories together, Mr. Speaker, the result is a clear plan towards achieving a dynamic, sustainable, and progressive economy. So if you permit me, Mr. Speaker, I would just like to highlight a few significant components of this draft bill. And from the onset, Mr. Speaker, we see important expenditures in strengthening our overall security and the safety of our citizens. $45 million is a significant investment in the safety of Dominicans. The reality is that we live in a time when it's possible for criminals to undertake identity theft. And the fact is that the use of the paper-based passports or the machine-readable passports presents the risk of these security threats. So how do we respond to these threats, Mr. Speaker? We spent $6.8 million on increasing our internal human capacity and maintenance of our passport issuing system to facilitate swift processing of the e-passports. And this new e-passport, Mr. Speaker, contains an electronic chip that stores travelers' bioinformation. And with this inbuilt biodata, it becomes very difficult for criminals to cause forgery, Mr. Speaker. And this is an important improvement in the overall security of our country Mr. Speaker. And I say this because we have been hearing a lot of comments in the media, Mr. Speaker, about the real objective of issuing the electronic passports, Mr. Speaker. And I believe we must commend our Minister for Security for really pushing that initiative, Mr. Speaker. And Dominicans can now have a peace of mind when it comes to their overall safety, Mr. Speaker. And as I'm on the issue of security, Mr. Speaker, we also see in this bill under the Ministry of Finance, $28.3 million spent in strengthening our due diligence on potential investors. And Mr. Speaker, it's no secret that we operate one of the best CBI programs in the world, Mr. Speaker. And this has been said and documented by a number of reputable international organizations. And we also know, Mr. Speaker, that government raises funds for taxes. So we can't escape taxes. We have to pay our taxes. And it's important to note that CBI is a very viable form of non-tax revenue, meaning that it allows us as a government to raise revenue without having to give the burden on our taxpayers, Mr. Speaker. And so the question for us in this Honorable House is that, is it practical for government to increase taxes on citizens to fund reconstruction and response following a disaster? Or is it prudent to increase taxes on citizens to fund infrastructural projects, especially given our small fiscal space and our vulnerability to external shocks? Mr. Speaker, that makes no sense. This will result in the same persons you're trying to help. You will reduce the disposable incomes and make them worse off, Mr. Speaker. And this is why, as a country and as a region, we have to support our CBI programs. It helps us achieve things that would otherwise be very difficult to achieve. And the evidence of this is everywhere for all of us to see, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the integrity of this important program must be protected. And this is where our due diligence fees comes in, Mr. Speaker. We must ensure that our potential investors meet a certain standard before investing in our country, Mr. Speaker. And this, of course, is good spending, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under the Ministry of Agriculture, we see $5 million expended towards the procurement of agricultural tools and equipment. And I'm always happy to see money being spent in agriculture coming from a very rural community where agriculture was the backbone, or agriculture is the backbone of our livelihood, Mr. Speaker. And a number of us could only attend secondary school and tertiary schooling because of the work that our parents did in their farms, Mr. Speaker. And in order to revamp the agricultural sector, I believe we first have to know what are the challenges our farmers face, Mr. Speaker. And this is one of the things I like about our new Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Speaker. He takes the time to meet the farmers and to understand what is going on, as we recently saw in our farmer store, Mr. Speaker. And this is also very important in the context of increasing our share contribution of GDP, share contribution of agriculture to GDP, Mr. Speaker. And one of the ways we can achieve this is by getting the necessary tools and equipment for our farmers, Mr. Speaker. So the money that they would use to buy these tools and equipment, they can now invest that money into some other aspects of the farming and give them the much needed ease up, Mr. Speaker. And this is the whole intention of this expenditure under the Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, many times we hear folks say that the youth are the future, Mr. Speaker, and to me that is absolutely nonsense, Mr. Speaker. And the reality is that the future is now, Mr. Speaker. And now is the time for our young people to take charge of all what is happening in the country of Dominica, Mr. Speaker. Now is the time for our young people to get into leadership roles, to sit on boards and committees and to organize community groups and to inspire other young persons to follow suit. And this is why the Commonwealth heads declared the year 2023 as the year of the youth, Mr. Speaker. And this means that the commitment is there at the highest level to tackle the challenges currently facing our young people across the region, Mr. Speaker. And I can assure this Parliament that our Prime Minister and the government, by extension, will spare no effort in creating the opportunities for the youth, as we have done in the past and we will continue to do, Mr. Speaker. And we see evidence of this in the supplementary estimates, Mr. Speaker. We see $52,812 being spent on the Youth Resilience Initiative, a project aimed at building resilience among the island's youth and bringing out the creativity among the young people. And the reality is that the skills a young person will need 20 years ago and the skills that a young person needs to survive today is completely different, Mr. Speaker, both from a business standpoint and also from their own personal development standpoint. So it's important to build resilience among the youth to ensure that they adapt to the new realities in the world. And through the Ministry of Youth, we will continue to create the opportunities for empowering young persons with the necessary skills that is needed to excel in this modern world. And just recently, we saw the Dominica Youth Business Trust open up registrations for young persons to give them an opportunity to transform their ideas into actual businesses and generate incomes for themselves and their families. And upon completion, these young people will now be equipped with the right skills and the business mindset to succeed in this environment. And we will also see over 100 young persons graduating from the program in a couple of weeks, Mr. Speaker. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the Youth Division continues to conduct a number of skills models from computer literacy to engine repairs, among so many others. And the fact is, there's always a demand for persons with these skills. So I'm really happy about these things, Mr. Speaker. And I believe one of the opposition members, I really can't recall who it was, they made mention of youth skills in Marigot. And just to tell that particular senator that prior to Hurricane Maria, we had a number of youth skills training happening in Marigot, Mr. Speaker. And after Maria, we had to focus on reconstructing the entire building, Mr. Speaker. And I can say in this parliament now that very soon we will open this youth center in Marigot, and it will be a hub for the entire office, Mr. Speaker, for the entire office, so that they could come and get exposed to the various skills to build capacity in Marigot and in office, Mr. Speaker. And furthermore, we have partnered with the ministry responsible for digital transformation to bring intermediate digital literacy sessions to young persons across Dominica. So really and truly, Mr. Speaker, we are taking it from basic computer skills and up to intermediate level, Mr. Speaker, and that's just going upwards in the right direction, Mr. Speaker. And we are implementing different approaches to ensure we build the technical capacity of our young people, both from a business standpoint and from a skill-based standpoint. And when one considers all the investments in the other aspects of the economy, like education, Mr. Speaker, and housing for young persons, like the Future Housing Program, all these opportunities are there for the young people of Dominica to take advantage of, and I encourage them to please take advantage of the opportunities the government is creating for them. Mr. Speaker, I can say without any fear of contradiction that Dominica is leading the way when it comes to sports in the Caribbean region, Mr. Speaker. So much so that almost every regional sporting body has expressed the willingness to come to Dominica and host a competition, Mr. Speaker. And this is not a coincidence, Mr. Speaker. You know, they see that we are making significant investments in our sporting infrastructure. They see that our young athletes are prepared to play. They see the support that we give to the clubs and the athletes and the associations, and they want to be part of this, Mr. Speaker. We see netball, we see introduction of boxing recently, cricket, basketball, football, Mr. Speaker. And I really want to commend the efforts of our immediate past Minister of Sports, Honorable Rosalind Paul, for her efforts, Mr. Speaker. Um, Rosalind has carried the sports banter for a long time, Mr. Speaker, and she did a fantastic job. I normally call her silent but deadly, Mr. Speaker, because of the way she operates, Mr. Speaker, but she has done a really, really good job in the Ministry of Sports. And looking at the expenditures, Mr. Speaker, under the Ministry of Sports, what comes to mind as a sportsman myself is that 2 decades ago, there wasn't one proper facility to take part in sports. And over the last 20 years, because of the investments of this Labour Party government, we have seen significant development as it relates to the infrastructure of sports all across Dominica, Mr. Speaker. We see advancement at the Windsor Park Stadium. And many of us here will know that the Windsor Park Stadium is regarded as one of the premier cricketing destinations in the region, Mr. Speaker. Again, this is not by chance. We have done the investment in the Windsor Park. We have recently upgraded the scoreboard. We have recently upgraded the players' pavilion, Mr. Speaker. And we have also upgraded the forecourts, Mr. Speaker, to attract regional and international netball, Mr. Speaker. And coming from a successful hosting of the OECS netball last year, we also have plans to host the under-19 netball competition in April coming, Mr. Speaker. And all this, Mr. Speaker, is because of the contribution of this government. And we will continue to advance the Windsor Park Stadium. Obviously, we have a reputation to maintain, Mr. Speaker. We want to strive to be the best. The lighting has been a concern in the past. We recently signed a contract for the restoration of the lighting, Mr. Speaker. As you know, the contractor is mobilizing. As we speak, there's heavy equipment on site. The first phase will involve demolishing the existing light poles and demolishing the foundation and running all the underground wires and electrical installation, Mr. Speaker. And the second phase will involve the actual erection of the poles. We have done our research, Mr. Speaker. We know what is required when it comes to lighting for cricket facilities, and we will strive to ensure that the Windsor Park Stadium gets high quality lighting to attract international games in the night, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have also seen a total transformation of the Benjamin's Park in Portsmouth, Mr. Speaker. I recall the Benjamin's Park being a swamp as a young boy growing up. And now we see the Benjamin's Park has a top-class cricketing facility, a top-class football facility, basketball courts. We have plans to build tennis courts at the Benjamin's Park. We also recently saw the development of an indoor facility right on the Benjamin's Park towards the 1 mile end. And that means that our cricketers can now play cricket in rain. They can play cricket 24/7. So there's no deterrent for training when it comes to cricket, Mr. Speaker, in the north. And I'm really, really happy to see this for our athletes. Mr. Speaker, we also see a number of basketball courts being developed around the island. We have the indoor facility at Massac, again a world-class facility attracting regional tournaments. We will also seek to upgrade a number of playing fields across the island. In the upcoming months, the ministry will visit a number of communities to do assessments on our playing facilities, because we want to ensure that we have good, decent facilities for athletes to play in the communities, Mr. Speaker. We have seen the re-emergence of table tennis in Dominica, Mr. Speaker. Again, thanks to the member for Roseau Central for efforts in boosting table tennis. And then we also have plans, as mentioned by the Prime Minister, to develop a 40-meter 8-lane synthetic track, which we will get some more information on at a later date. So I'm happy for our athletes, Mr. Speaker. Um, when it comes to track and field, we continue to prepare for the Carifta Games in April. We also are preparing for the Olympics next year because it's never too early to start to prepare. And I also want to commend all our athletes for the hard work over the last year. I mean, I don't want to go into mentioning names because there's so many athletes that excelled. We have Alik Afanas. I think that's a significant achievement, being appointed as captain of the Windward's Island senior men's team, Mr. Speaker. Must be commended. And of course, we have Onisha Fontaine and Abini St. Jean. They represented the West Indies under 19 cricket team, Mr. Speaker. And that again is a significant achievement. I also want to congratulate all our primary and secondary schools who were victorious at the various championships organized by the sports division. The secondary schools and primary schools competition, Mr. Speaker, have been very exciting so far, and I encourage us to support our athletes from an early age. And that's the only way they're going to excel, if they get the support. I'm asking for the crowd support. Too many times we see games going on and nobody's watching. You know, let's support our athletes. I can tell you that this goes a very long way, Mr. Speaker. I also want to commend the various sporting organizations and clubs for the work over the last year. I believe that their work is important in developing sports at the grassroots level. And at a ministry, as a ministry, we will also continue to explore ways to boost sports at the grassroots level, as well as seek support to promote our sportsmen and women as much as practically possible, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to see that we spent some funds in the sports sector as part of this supplementary estimates. I can assure you that the spending in sports will continue because we know of the benefits of partaking in sports, not just from a personal standpoint, but from a country standpoint. And when they do well, we celebrate the success, Mr. Speaker, as a country. And then because of that, we have to ensure that they have the right tools and resources to partake in sports. Mr. Speaker, sports is flourishing in Dominica. If I talk about sports, I will talk till tomorrow. But we also have lots of work to do as a ministry, Mr. Speaker, because the fact is it's easy to get on top, but it's always harder to stay on top. So let's all work together to develop our athletes, our young people, and our communities, Mr. Speaker. With these few words, I want to provide my unwavering support to the supplementary application.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes, Senator Lockhart.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to make my contribution towards the schedule of supplementary appropriation and to seek your permission to refer to my notes from time to time.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, before I delve into my contribution on the schedule of supplementary estimates for July 2021-2022, I take this opportunity to profoundly thank Honorable Prime Minister for affording me the opportunity to serve within this legislative body as a senator on the government side. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious position in which I am honored and humbled to serve. I further convey my immense thanks and gratitude to Almighty Father, my family, friends, well-wishers, and most importantly, to the wonderful people of the Castle Bruce constituency. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your encouragement. And I dare say, had it not been for you, the people of the Castle Bruce constituency, I wouldn't be standing there this morning. Mr. Speaker, the people of the Castle Bruce constituency, for the 5th consecutive time, demonstrated their unwavering confidence in a Dominican Labour Party-led administration to improve their standard of living and make Dominica the best place to live and to conduct business. And I am pleased to be here as a second voice in this honorable house for the people of the Castleberry constituency. I am a firm believer that you can lead from where you are. Mr. Speaker, leadership is not about position or authority. It is the energy and purpose by which you lead yourself each day and how you serve others. The people of the Castleberry constituency, you have in me a servant who will continue to work alongside our parliamentary representative, Honorable Octavia Alfred, to ensure that every program and every policy of this government reaches you and impacts your lives in meaningful ways. Mr. Speaker, allow me to highlight two important reports. In 2022, the International Labour Organization, ILO, projected that there will be a working hour deficit equivalent to 52 million full-time jobs owing to COVID-19 crisis-induced labor market disruption. This is largely due to what has been described as an uneven and incomplete recovery of the global labor market. Report number 2, in 2022, flagship report of the ILO, World Employment and Social Outlook Trends 2022, indicated that achieving a human-centered recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic will require the successful implementation of 4 pillars. 1, inclusive...
Senator, what is the relevance to the supplementary estimate?
I'm coming to that, Mr. Speaker. Just
okay, all right.
I'm saying like a backdrop, Mr. Speaker, on what I'm going to speak.
Yeah, well, next time you need to indicate that to the House, but proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a learning process for me, and I'll get it, don't worry. Yes, Mr. Speaker, so I was saying, the 4 pillars: inclusive economic growth and employment, protection of all workers, universal social protection, and social dialogue. Against this backdrop, it is evident that the impact of unemployment and underemployment, along with the decline in the productivity in Dominica's major sectors resulting from the economic shock of COVID-19, would have been far worse in the absence of the National Employment Program. Mr. Speaker, in the supplementary appropriation that is being presented to this Honorable House for approval, the Ministry of Rural Modernization and Kalinago Upliftment recorded an expenditure of over $29 million. This amount, Mr. Speaker, reflects payments of interns under the National Employment and Mentorship Program. While this figure might appear to be substantial, the purpose and benefits far outweigh the dollar value. The NEP from inception has been able to provide on-the-job training opportunities for excess of 4,000 Dominicans across various components, Mr. Speaker, far exceeding the initial 400. While some are anti this very critical and beneficial program, Mr. Speaker, I would like to highlight the tremendous benefits of such a program. Contrary to popular belief, the NEP is not about menial tasks. In fact, there are many more components of the NEP which have impacted every facet of society. The program has produced leaders and managers, office administrators, teachers, bankers, and has been successful in shaping the minds and building capacity. Mr. Speaker, I, Senator Dwayne Austin Lockhart, was once engaged under the National Employment Program. So you'd well understand, Mr. Speaker, while I'm speaking a bit extensively about the importance of the National Employment Program. Because, I mean, look at me now. Look at me now. Mr. Speaker, even when the critics thought that the NEP would have been short-lived, and they characterized it as an election gimmick, a decade later, it continues to serve as a catalyst of growth and employment for many. The contribution of the NEP to the livelihood of individuals remain critical in maintaining economic activity, ensuring the government's mandate to reduce unemployment and continued economic growth. The fact that the program is designed to engage and empower citizens in every community throughout this country with access, with equity of access, regardless of gender, regardless of social background, and regardless of political affiliation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this speaks volume of the commitment of the government to uplift the livelihood of every citizen. Mr. Speaker, as of January 1st, 2023, the contracts for majority of the interns engaged have been extended for a further 2 years. This will certainly, Mr. Speaker, provide a much needed job stability and allow these interns to make important financial decisions. Mr. Speaker, I am particularly pleased that this decision will impact over 250 interns currently engaged in the Castle Bruce constituency. Mr. Speaker, I have witnessed firsthand how the NEP has transformed lives of many right here in the Castle Bruce constituency. During my tenure at Christian Children's Fund, CCF, or what we know it as, Mr. Speaker, we conducted a study. And the primary reason, Mr. Speaker, what we found was the primary reason for employment of women in some rural communities was the unavailability of daycare services. Mothers who have been qualified to engage in traditional work, Mr. Speaker, weren't able to do so because they do not have anyone to assist them to take care of their child while they go out to work, Mr. Speaker. So they had no choice but to stay home. Often, many had to rely on partners, relatives, and the kindness of friends to make ends meet. Today, Mr. Speaker, parents are able to send their children of school age to school, head to work for 6 hours, and be back at home to receive their children and provide them with a hot meal, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of a latchkey generation is a thing of the past. Mothers are now independent breadwinners. Our youth are engaged. The guys on the blocks who are frequently and unfairly typecast are gainfully employed. The level of cleanup and beautification that is taking place around Dominica is unprecedented. The teams play a vital role in ensuring the continued health and wellness of all our citizens. Mr. Speaker, from 2013, the NEP has evolved to accommodate the human resource needs of both public and private sector institutions within all productive sectors in the economy, thereby increasing the productive capacity while offsetting the costs associated with this need. Mr. Speaker, it is therefore safe to deduce that the NEP remains an excellent model for addressing the issues of unemployment, empowerment, and professional advancement of Dominicans. Every dollar that is spent on the people of this country for this program is well justified. Mr. Speaker, I will speak briefly on the transformation that is going on right now in Dominica as it relates to housing. Mr. Speaker, many years ago, again, while I was engaged at CCF, I had the opportunity to work in perhaps every community in Dominica, Mr. Speaker. And what I experienced then was heartbreaking, to say the least. Inadequate housing and poor living condition was widespread, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can recall having to work with families who live in galvanized structures with dirt floors, shacks built from waste materials, and the list goes on. Today, Mr. Speaker, because of the Housing Revolution program of this Labour Party-led government, the very land where these types of makeshift structures stood are now replaced with safe, resilient, and adequate homes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have to have an understanding of where we will to appreciate what we have, Mr. Speaker. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, when the opposition leader yesterday spoke about people not getting support, and we do it in a partisan way. I mean, I don't want to be too hard on her because last night she gave me my basilic tea and she complimented me on my rose and so on. You know, Mr. Speaker, so I don't want to be too hard on her. You know, because she was nice to me, nice conversation last night. But I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, you will find these things happening. People make up stories. But you see, you cannot lead your constituency based on WhatsApp messages. Because usually, when you get a WhatsApp message, Mr. Speaker, it's not to promote something good, you know. So my advice to you all on this side of the house, put your sneakers and your jeans and walk in your constituency and find out the things that the Labour Party has been doing for the people of Dominica. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have been doing it everywhere, every corner. You know, because those depressing contributions and so on, last it was already so cold. You know, depressing, man, demotivating. I mean, good things are happening, so say it. So say it. You know, Mr. Speaker, you should be happy at home and at work. And if you are not happy in these places, it is going to lead to anxiety and depression. Mr. Speaker, we are all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Housing is seen as an essential and basic need. And without the same, an individual will not be able to achieve physical, psychological, and emotional actualization. I'm a social worker, you know, because you're Mark there, you know, that's it. Don't ask me so, you know. The creation of additional housing will not only be beneficial to the citizens of Dominica, but it also contribute to the growth of the overall GDP. A booming construction economy creates employment and helps to increase the spending power of citizens, which in turn decreases their dependency on the welfare system. Adequate housing provides a sense of stability and identity, offers protection against environmental hazards, and promotes self-sufficiency. Feelings of stress and anxiety related to housing could also affect one's personal well-being. This can eventually lead to mental health problems and make existing problems harder to cope with. For most families in Dominica, Mr. Speaker, their home is their most widely owned asset. It provides them with a sense of pride, and that's what the Labour Party has been doing. And we have not been doing it for votes, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister always said, when you see people first and politics after. Because even in the last election, Mr. Speaker, when I had to tell you some of the people that we had to convince to vote for the party, Mr. Speaker, UWPIs who receive homes, UWPIs who receive homes, Mr. Speaker. Because if we had to go based on politics, or if our decisions were all politically motivated, Mr. Speaker, it would be a different Dominica. The spillover effect will be the attitude towards work and the self of worth and development. Mr. Speaker, any money spent on the people of Dominica to improve their standard of living is fully and properly justified. The Labour Party government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, has redefined the role of government over the years to one that places sharp focus on personal development and the welfare of every citizen. The government's track record of prudent spending remains unmatched. Mr. Speaker, great and wonderful things will continue to happen in Dominica and for Dominicans. The people of the Castle Ridge constituency, you too shall benefit tremendously, and I am proud to be part of that team. So, Mr. Speaker, I will conclude here and categorically state that I give my full and unwavering support to the supplementary appropriation for the period 2020-2022. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, why do I have to speak again? Mr. Speaker, let me first of all, with your permission, congratulate you on your second appointment as Speaker of this Honorable House. I've already expressed my commendation to my brother Honorable Roll, and so too I want to commend and congratulate everyone on both sides of the House who have taken the oath to serve this country. And Mr. Speaker, I would not have been worthy of being called a name if I did not take this opportunity also to express my gratitude in the most profuse manner to the people of the Mao constituency for allowing me to have been the longest serving member of parliament in the history of politics for the Mao constituency. I'm also very happy that they have made the right decision to vote for my new parent, Honorable Castaneda Bill. Mr. Speaker, I stood here just now just to give my support to the supplementary appropriation bill. But before I go into the Ministry of National Security and Home Affairs then, where you have seen $9.3 million was allocated for that ministry, I want to just refer to some of the comments made by some of the members on the other side as we proceed on a new mission of a national reset. I was comforted by the fact that we have a new cadre of young people on the other side who will bring a new dimension to this Honorable House and the debate. And I was inclined, therefore, to have given them a second chance. But again, what I have seen, Mr. Speaker, I've learned, and you have learned, I'm old school, that it's always important to read the entire composition because questions that will be asked thereafter are derived from the passage. So you must not be selective in reading the comprehension passage. I'm saying that because, Mr. Speaker, while some members on the other side spoke smoothly and softly, by so doing, they also executed some punches. Let me start firstly with Honorable Senator Sean Douglas, who I hope, and of course, should know, for matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, that passion fruit ice cream and coconut ice cream do not taste the same and they do not look the same. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, when you reference this, it made reference to the overdraft facility and compare the current overdraft facility to what obtained in 1990s. That is treating passion fruit ice cream the same way as coconut ice cream and comparing apples and grapes. They are not the same. Because, Mr. Speaker, in 1996, the economy, the GDP of the country then, was significantly smaller than what obtains now. In 1996, the GDP of Dominica was $292 million US. Senator Delbert Parrish, who is very good in doing maths, a crypto expert, can do his own calculations, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, now in 2023, the GDP of this country is $554.2 million US. If you were to do the conversion and express it in East currency, you're talking over $1.5 billion. That is the size of the country. And in the biggest economy in the world, the United States, we have a very interesting debate taking place right now in the Congress, asking to increase or to raise the debt limit to allow the government, the federal government, to function, Mr. Speaker. So you have to understand the dynamics of running a country. But, Mr. Speaker, what is more important that they did not see in reading the passage? Out of the $235 million that we're seeking approval for, only 12% came by way of loans. The rest, grants, and from our local circumstance. This is a demonstration of an economy that is resilient and robust, Mr. Speaker. And we have to understand that in the proper context, therefore. So, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Lockhart, Senator Lockhart, I mean, his contribution was bang on the spot. And I want to make reference and say further, Mr. Speaker, that the supplementary estimate is a snapshot of what this government has been able to do over the years to transform the lives of ordinary Dominicans, Mr. Speaker. And why do I say that? $61 million towards housing. And you heard the Minister for Housing last night very eloquently reference the various forms of interventions in terms of housing in this country. This is a strong statement by this government to the commitment to transforming and elevating the lives of ordinary Dominicans. And that is the mantra of the Dominican Labour Party, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, permit me also, Mr. Speaker, there is this very contemporary economist and French economist, Thomas Piketty. And he writes on capital in the 21st century. And he's referencing that the level of inequality in Europe and the United States is at the level of 1910. I want to take that, Mr. Speaker, and put it into the context within a Dominican reality. When this Labour Party came into office, Mr. Speaker, the quality of life and access, Mr. Speaker, to Dominican, the ordinary man, to capital was almost zero. And this government, Mr. Speaker, through the supplementary estimate and all this other intervention for the past 20-something years, especially under the stewardship of Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, has allowed the ordinary man in this country, Mr. Speaker, to have access to capital assets, Mr. Speaker. And fundamental capital assets, as you know, is the ability of the ordinary person to own homes, Mr. Speaker. And this government, therefore, has been able to remove the ordinary people of this country from being subjects of somebody else, to be relevant and to live with a sense of confidence and dignity. Because if you do not have a piece of a country, if you do not own a piece of property, Mr. Speaker, you have no sense of dignity and confidence, Mr. Speaker. And that is what the Labour Party is all about, Mr. Speaker. And that is manifested, Mr. Speaker, in every measure. I don't want to talk about social capital. And you see $28 million is provided for in this current supplementary estimate before this Honorable House. And you heard Honorable Kent, who made reference, Mr. Speaker, to the number of health and wellness facilities that are being constructed throughout this country, Mr. Speaker. And that has never happened before in the history of this country, Mr. Speaker. And Senator Delbert Parish, who absconded, yes, his parish. I know I'm saying that. Who absconded from his parish and is now in Maho, Mr. Speaker. St. Paul, Mr. Speaker. He did not see item 56 on the supplementary estimate. That speaks to over $6 million currently being that was spent in the brand new modern Marigot hospital. He did not see it because he did not read the entire passage, Mr. Speaker. But it's good in crypto. But the people are still waiting to go to Dubai, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this, in my view, Mr. Speaker, underscore now, Mr. Speaker, you have to understand, this is Parliament, you know. So when you make blows, even if they are soft, it might get very hot inside there, you know, Mr. Speaker. It might get very hot, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say that. And back to housing, I'm happy, and I know the Minister for Housing has connection in Maho too, where 17 houses currently being built in Kinfield. She was there last week. Her first tour was in Kinfield, and that demonstrated a commitment to the continuation of the project in Kinfield. This is what the Labour Party is all about, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, let me just say further. And I want now to come back now to the Ministry of National Security and then Home Affairs, where $9.3 million was actually spent for the year under review, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me just say firstly that the $278,000 that was spent to procure 2 new ambulances demonstrate the Labour Party commitment to ensuring that the people of Dominica have access to health care. And the response mechanism, therefore, has to be very effective, Mr. Speaker. We have 7 health districts in this country: La Plaine, Casibus, Granby, Portsmouth, Roseau, Marigot, Mr. Speaker. And every health district in this country has an ambulance, Mr. Speaker. every health district. And as we move towards a national reset to extend our services to this country, we shall ensure, Mr. Speaker, that in the bigger districts, namely Roseau, Marigot, and Portsmouth, we have more than one, Mr. Speaker, ambulance, Mr. Speaker. That is what this Labour Party administration is all about, Mr. Speaker. That was money well spent. And let me take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to commend the men and women of the Dominican Fire and Ambulance Services, Mr. Speaker. These men and women have demonstrated the highest degree of service to the country. They were frontline in COVID, and they never, Mr. Speaker, protested. They were at the forefront. And I want to salute them today, this honorable House, Mr. Speaker, and they're great Dominicans, and we're very proud of the men and women of the fire service, Mr. Speaker. Senator Henderson Reid, she made reference to the fire station in Marigot, but she did not see the $6 million for the hospital in Marigot. But, Mr. Speaker, we're in a situation where we have some internal leaks with the plumbing at the Marigot fire station. I want to report to this honorable House that as of January, the issues were dealt with and repaired, Mr. Speaker. So, apparently she doesn't live in Marigot. She only goes to the airport when she has to go overseas, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, now there's another issue, Mr. Speaker, there's another issue, Mr. Speaker, that has to do with a leak towards the engine room. As we speak, the estimates are being actually put together, and this administration, this Labour Party administration, this current government, shall ensure that this repair work is done in quick time, Mr. Speaker. We also have, Mr. Speaker, over $6 million was spent to improve the capacity from a technical and human resource standpoint within the Immigration Department of the Dominican Police Force. Mr. Speaker, we speak about the national reset, and key to that is to ensure that the government, the various functionaries of the state, are so equipped in order to ensure that the people of Dominica get quicker and more efficient service. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we have done the following in the Immigration Department as we migrate from the machine-readable passport to the electronic passport, Mr. Speaker. This is a passport that we believe, as we seek to make our passport counterfeit proof that the machine-readable passport has service time, and is now for us, as we move to our national reset, we must be compliant to international standards and best practices insofar as civil aviation is concerned. And one key to that is to ensure that our travel document, namely our passport, is in fact compliant. You can recall, Mr. Speaker, that we made various statements, including myself, and we have said that it's important and that for security concerns, that we move from this old passport to a passport that is more resilient, Mr. Speaker. So what we have done, Mr. Speaker, we are spending in the tune of $14 million, not only to ensure that we have a new passport that is internationally compliant, but also to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that we upgrade our entire border security network to give effect, Mr. Speaker, and to facilitate advanced passenger information and cargo information, Mr. Speaker. But with our passports, Mr. Speaker, as we have declared that as of the 31st of January, Mr. Speaker, Dominicans holding Dominican passport will not be allowed to leave Dominica without having an e-passport, Mr. Speaker. We have to ensure, therefore, that the level of competence within the immigration department is such that people, the issuance process, Mr. Speaker, can be done in a timely fashion. As a consequence, we have hired additional staff, some retired police officers, a number of young Dominicans who have been told are very efficient in terms of collating data, etc. And we have now in place, Mr. Speaker, a free shift system, 8 to 4 in the afternoon, 4 to midnight, Mr. Speaker, and midnight to 8 o'clock the next morning. And we're now moving, Mr. Speaker, we are now moving to Saturdays, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we, as we move on a mission of a new national reset, ensure that that delivery of service to the people of Dominica is not compromised and is done in the quickest, most effective manner, Mr. Speaker. So this is what this is about, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to just, again, shift and make a reference to, but when he spoke, he said he did not see. You cannot blame somebody who did not see something, even if they were wearing spectacles, Mr. Speaker. He did not see, he did not see. I don't know. So, Mr. Speaker, reference was made to the grammar school. And the story that was told, and of course he would have known, he was the press secretary then, and that the grammar school was promised. He did not see it completed. But what I know I can see, and everybody who are not impaired visually, if you're driving along, Mr. Speaker, where the forestry department is, you'll see that a wing of the Dominican Grammar School was constructed under the same arrangement with the People's Republic of China. Let me take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, in this honorable House, to commend and to express our gratitude to the government and people of the People's Republic of China for the tremendous work and support they have given to this country. We would not have been where we are today without the help and the support. And I am confident that that level of functional cooperation between Dominica and China will remain, Mr. Speaker, once Roosevelt's carried and the Dominican Labour Party remains in office, Mr. Speaker. It's about confidence in the leadership of this country. I hope, how long is it going to take to build international airport? He said, how long? Mr. Speaker, this Labour Party's government, under our current leadership, has demonstrated time and time again that the people of this country, the welfare of the people of this country, comes first, Mr. Speaker. And what they would have liked to have seen in our pursuit to build this flagship airport was to bulldoze all the people on the proposed site in Wesley and to create a hoopla. But this is not the mantra of the Labour Party. The mantra of the Labour Party, Mr. Speaker, is put me people's first. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, I did not tell that to my wife, I drove all the way down. I drove all the way down to this place in Wesley. What do you call this again? Joe Burton location. To get an appreciation of for myself, the tremendous work this Labour Party has been doing in transforming the lives of the ordinary people of this country. You had a number of people who occupied the proposed site. And Mr. Speaker, what this Prime Minister has done demonstrates the highest degree of passion, Mr. Speaker. And we are seeing the emergence of a brand new city in Joburton, with 31 houses, 3 and 2 bedrooms, costing $288,000 and over $300,000, Mr. Speaker, have been built with 3 duplexes, 1 bedroom each, Mr. Speaker. People have already moved in, they're planting the flowers. That is what this Labour Party stands for, Mr. Speaker. The airport has begun. Because in order to move the soil for the runway, you have to have an unencumbered site. But the people in any social space are the most important players in any social environment. So you must therefore cater for them first. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, the people of Joburg and the people of Wesley are saying, thank you for giving us that grant, honorable grant, Mr. Speaker. Because he has ensured that his people were catered for first. And I've been so advised, and that is when, because they are mortally scared, Mr. Speaker, of the international airport. You know, when you're small, you say about Jumbie, mortally scared. Them fellas, the airport is like a jab for them, Mr. Speaker. So, it is coming, Shawnee, Honorable Senator Sean Douglas, towards the end of this month, you shall see the massive movement of equipment ever to be seen in the history of this country. That is the manifestation of a government and a prime minister that is committed to building the international airport. That has never happened before in the history of this country. I'm old enough. I still look good, but I'm old enough to know, Mr. Speaker, and to have read what transpired then. Because the father of Dominican politics, Mr. Libner, okay, Mr. Speaker, wanted to have built the airport. There was a site in the constituency of St. Joseph that was actually identified then. Then came, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Patrick John, the one who led us into independence. I can call his name because I was his friend, and I'm his wife's friend also. He gave me all his writing when I was studying. I have that in my possession. He tried, Mr. Speaker, to build the airport. He spoke about it. Then came Eugenia Charles, the Dane. Okay, so once someone has a Dane before a name, that's a big person, you know. She wasn't able, Mr. Speaker, to even think of pushing soil, Mr. Speaker. Then, Mr. Speaker, my good friend, former Prime Minister Edison James, on the eve of the election in 1998, in the budget, they allocated $79 million, Mr. Speaker, for the construction of an international airport. We're still looking for the money. Got one impression of an airport, Mr. Speaker. All right, we're still looking for it. But today, under Roosevelt's curtain and Dominican Labour Party, Mr. Speaker, we are seeing real signs, Mr. Speaker, that this international airport shall be built. So come inside there. If other papers like the invoices you have for ice cream, understand? And they're pushing that there and hit us like a blow, you're part of us. Understand? Even if you fall out, remember, you're part of us and the good we have done together. So, Mr. Speaker, that is what we're all about. It's about the manifestation of commitment and passion to the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to take up more time, Mr. Speaker, and to say that I feel so happy, Mr. Speaker.
5 more minutes.
That's okay. I feel so happy, but whenever I speak, the time flying faster. But I feel so happy, Mr. Speaker, that over $10 million was spent to build, not rehabilitate. I take offense, Minister for Finance, in the estimate when he talks about rehabilitation of the Mao Primary School. Yes. No, not rehabilitation. This is the construction of the best primary school in the history of Dominica. Not rehabilitation. And I want to commend and to say thank you to this Labour Party administration, because the last time we had a school built in Mao was built in the 70s by the Canadian government. But we have emerged so much in this country that we are able, from our own local circumstances, to mobilize the requisite funding to build our own schools, Mr. Speaker. And that is what the supplementary estimate that we seek approval for is all about. From our own circumstances, we are doing things, building schools, building homes, Mr. Speaker, building health centers, Mr. Speaker, educating people. And I have not even spoken, Mr. Speaker, to what I consider, in my view, to be the best capital. And that is the human capital. Because it's the human capital that will elevate any country, Mr. Speaker. I want to look at the amount of money that we have spent to build schools and to educate Zamfa Pamalewe. I'm not going to translate. Zamfa Pamalewe.
You still have to translate.
For people's children. Mr. Speaker, we have migrated from 1910 era to our current era, where all are eating, Mr. Speaker, and aspiring under the Dominican Labour Party. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Vince Henderson, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, let me begin by congratulating you on your election, unopposed by acclamation of the members of the 11th Parliament. Mr. Speaker, your job is not an easy one. I myself would rather be in this position rather than in yours for several reasons. You carry a tremendous responsibility, fairness, impartiality, and restraint, to restrain yourself from getting involved in the debates, and perhaps when you see us behaving badly, you yourself, or you hear us delving in parley insult and misbehaving, you may feel to say something yourself. So, I myself have taken a position. I'm not translating anything I say in Creole. I withdraw it, because this House must move to accept Creole as a language. And I stand here on the behalf of the people of the Grand Bay constituency, and I believe we need to show greater respect to the tradition that they have preserved for us, the language that throughout Dominica we enjoy. And I want to take the opportunity to thank them. Well, Penville can talk for themselves, you know. I am the most fortunate member of Parliament. I am the only one who represents a constituency where he was not born, and his family had left a very, very long time ago. So I have to bask in that and thank the people of Granby for their hospitality. And they are, in fact, you know, the best people you can represent in this Parliament. I want to thank them once again for standing with me and giving me the opportunity to serve them. Mr. Speaker, but I want to thank you for having done a terrific job the last time, and I look forward to you continuing in that vein. And of course, our Deputy Speaker, our youngest ever Deputy Speaker at his first election, I want to congratulate him on that election. I will not claim any credit for his delving into politics, but I've known him for a long time, and I'm sure that he will continue to do a good job, especially under the tutelage of his grandmother, the longest serving Speaker of the House in the Commonwealth. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate all of us here who have been sworn in. Again, I did that earlier, but I want to do that again. And all my colleagues. But I want to congratulate the members of the opposition. I want to congratulate you, first of all, Mr. Charles, Anthony Charles, the Member of Parliament for the Marigot constituency, and Ms. Jesmer Paul Victor of the Salisbury constituency for standing up for democracy, for participating in the elections and allow the will of the people to determine who they want to represent them in the House of Assembly. I mean, someone once said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others that have been tried. It was Winston Churchill who said that after he was defeated, just shortly after winning the war, or playing a major role in the victory of the Second World War. But I believe democracy is very fragile. It takes work. It's very costly. And this is why we have invested heavily in our electoral process to ensure that we can defend democracy. But it takes work and willingness on the part of all who participate in the democratic process. And that's why today, you being here is a very powerful statement. And in my mind, nullifies the argument that there was no free and fair elections in Dominica, because you agreed to be here. And those of you who have agreed to become senators, after all, you cannot benefit from the work of Jesmer Paul, the leader of the opposition, Member of Parliament for Salisbury, and the member for Marigot, and then take to the airwaves and criticize the very process which brought you here, in which they participated. So, those of you, and I see young Senator Ms. Victor, and my cousin, Mrs. Henderson Reed, and young Paris. It's good to have these young people participate in the process. But you yourselves need to defend your position, because you have voluntarily taken the oath to be members of this parliament and to sort of just rubbish the claims that are being made that there were not any free and fair elections. But we will come to that, because I don't want to spend much of my time on that. But let's talk about why are we here. The supplementary estimate, because every time we come to the parliament with a supplementary estimate or appropriation, there always are those criticisms. Lack of planning, you guys can't plan, you guys can do this, you can do that. And then we got a little admonition from Senator Douglas. But I just want to make two fundamental points about this process. One, there was a national budget for 2020-2021, which was approved. It was approved. And 21-22, approved. Money spent. So what we're doing here is basically, and Senator Paris called it overspending, but he give it a bad connotation, as if it's a bad thing. If you have money, and you're going down the road, you decide you're going to buy one bread. But I say, boy, things good, and I know my neighbor hungry. I go and buy another bread, I'll give it to him. You overspending as if it's a bad thing? It's a good thing, because if you look at what we have approved here, no, I want you to pay attention to that, because words have meaning. And people listening to you might think, boy, this fella's really reckless, this fella's just overspending. And these things were funded, they were paid for. They were paid for, and it's important to pay attention to that. 19% of which grants. That's a significant amount, 39 million East Caribbean dollars by way of grants. Grants, and you know what it means? It means that governments, institutions throughout the world trust the Dominican Labour Party so much that they're willing to give us money, free grants, that we can invest in our development. And I want to take the opportunity to thank our bilateral partners and multilateral partners for their continued contribution, their trust and confidence in the Dominican Labour Party government, and we look forward to continue working with them. 71% of that came from our local funds. We were able to raise money, $168 million. That's That's a significant amount of money to raise from your local funds. And interestingly, we only took a small amount in loans, 16%, $28 million. Small amount. But that is also significant because it means that you can pay your debt. That's why you get loans. You can't walk into the bank and ask for a loan if you don't have the ability to pay. So we have the ability to pay. We have the ability to manage. And this is why we qualify for those loans. So it's important to put this in context. But a very important thing to bear in mind that these were investments made. And I want to just highlight something about this document. If you take your time and go through it. It is arranged by way of ministries. But there are topics, there are themes throughout that. And if you go through it, you will see that. And Senator Douglas, I don't want to refer to your comparison of 1999 and your meager 7 million. That's all you have got, see? That you come in there and say? I mean, really, man? I mean, when you went back to 1999, I was looking forward to some major, comparison and criticism. But the guys could not go more than that. They did not have the ability to raise money. They did not have the ability to raise money from local funds. They did not have the ability to get money from friendly governments or from international multilateral organizations. They could not raise money by way of loan because they had already borrowed at 15.5% and therefore had no fiscal space. And therefore they struggled to raise a meager $7 million by way of supplementary estimate. And to get to the heart of what about planning and all of this, you can plan as good as you can. You can't stop a hurricane from coming. You cannot stop cost overrun on a project that is essential. And sometimes the way the assistance come from these funding agencies, you cannot plan properly for them. The important thing is that when the time comes for you to make your counterpart contribution, you can go by way of a contingency fund warrant and to ask the Minister of Finance to allow you to spend monies that were not budgeted. So what would you prefer? You would prefer that the thousands of Dominicans who benefit from the National Employment Program, the $25 million that you say, boy, you can't pay that now, that was on the budget. Is that what we want to say? The elderly people who are receiving care from the NEP caregivers, are we saying we should deny them that care? And by the way, I know we have an ongoing competition, but one of these days I want to take all of you to Tetmon and we'll drive back down. And you will see, and you will all agree that, in fact, we have the best NEP teams. We know that because my good friend Leandra up there, making sure that she takes care of the place. And when they get down to Grand Bay, Cleo is there holding the fort, and Mrs. John Baptist making sure our elderly are well taken care of under our program. So we appreciate these programs, and these programs are important. But to go back and talk about the themes and what you see from this supplementary estimate that may have missed us. We're talking about protection of lives and livelihoods, the significant and massive investments for COVID response. I don't even need to go to them in detail. We know, we see, we have it. Empowerment, because we talk a lot about training and education. I mean, these are massive investments in education and training. I know my friend and me likes to refer to it as capacity building. I hate that term. It's training and education. We're also looking at creating an environment for economic activity, making investments. And I want to speak to a few of them. Because sometimes people criticize us because we help people so much. They say, oh, don't give a man a fish, teach a man to fish. Then when you teach a man to fish, they say, oh, the fish not big enough. You should give him more fish. Or the wicked. I mean, it is strange. But in this supplementary estimate, not even the budget, the supplementary estimate alone, we are teaching a man to fish, literally. Just look at the kinds of investments that we are proving in. This could have been an easy one for you for your first time out. Because it is so compelling. just looking at the investments made, and so we can talk about fisheries. And I want to say something about the Marigot Fisheries Complex, because it was the member for Marigot raised it. Very interesting points, good observations. But there are some things that have to be taken into account, obviously. And it is something that I think should be on the table for discussion. We had this a long time ago. I had the great fortune of being the Minister of Fisheries at the time when we were negotiating the contract for that project. And it was a significant investment, about 10 million US dollars. But what is even more important to say, and you, member for the Marigot constituency, you need to acknowledge the fact that in addition to getting the government of Japan, and we have to express our gratitude to them, for financing that facility, when it got damaged by Hurricane Maria, we were able, and thanks to Minister Defoe, who was then Chief Fisheries Officer, who played his role in that, and the minister at the time, who moved quickly to ensure that under the guidance of our Prime Minister, we were able to get the government of Japan to return to Dominica to invest again, grant funding to repair that facility. That is what we're talking about here. And we are making our own contribution, counterpart funding, into that facility. So over 8 million EC dollars went in there after Hurricane Maria, in addition to the 27 million that we invested to construct it. So that is the kinds of things that we're looking at. The same for Roseau Fisheries Complex. And then we talk about, something else I find very interesting in this Dominica. There were no fisheries complexes. There was no real hospital to talk about in Marigot. And we built them, and all of a sudden, we're being bit on them. As if people forget that. Sometimes we forget how Dominica was, before labor. And especially before the last 15 years. Because we've come such a long way, we've done so much that people tend to forget. But, my friend, I want to go back to the estimate. And I heard Senator Douglas spoke about the grammar school and Taiwan. Boy, I thank God for the day that Roosevelt Skerrit called me and told me, comrade, we switch into the PRC, Boy, them fellas were stingy, tight. And you were talking about a school funded by Taiwan. But the most we get from Taiwan is a little pineapple and corn and $2 million a year. Pawpaw. Yeah, they did very good in the pawpaw. It was good. And then they messed up the indigenous species, varieties. My friend, you were with us, man. You know the thing. You and I went to Taiwan together. We went to Taipei, we went to Kaohsiung. The fellas, they give us tea. They bring us in a museum. And nothing. Yeah, if you really want to go, let's go Beijing, brother. Come back home and let's go Beijing. I'll bring you Beijing. So I don't know, man. My friend, man. I know you always wanted to be in the thing. Rosie don't leave it for you, but come, man, come back home, man. Come, yeah, of course. Mr. Speaker, I'm looking at another theme here. Investments in human capital we spoke about. That's one thing. Training, education, investments in schools and facilities, training, great stuff. But we're talking about investments, economic, financial investments the government made. And I want to thank my colleague, the member for the Collioure constituency, Honorable Pinard, for his brilliant explanation about the subscription of the ordinary shares at NBD that I think some people were questioning. And of course, we understand the concern that you raise, Senator Douglas, but clearly I hope you accept that education we got from the member of the Collioure constituency. But I think what should not be, the point that we should not miss is that the government actually had money to make that investment, $8 million. That was even more than them fellas supplementary in 99. $8 million we're able to make that investment. So that is money well spent. And these are important institutions of the state that we need to ensure that they're in good fiscal health. And the only reason we're able to get overdraft converted to loan is because the bank know that we will pay. And we have paid. And we have brought down the overdraft significantly within manageable limits, even lower than what the Parliament has approved. And that is commendable. But let's talk about investments. Domlec. I want to say a few things about Domlec, because we all know what we went through. We know the story. I don't need to rehash. I don't need to repeat what happened, the sale of Domlec by the then administration, the UWP administration, a grave injustice to the people of Dominica. I think they sold it at a price that was almost a giveaway to the guys. But we came in and we decided, in order to secure Dominica's power supply, electricity, and to prepare us for the transition into renewable energy, we had to make that investment. We've always felt that this is one company that the people of Dominica should control. And we worked, and I can tell you, because I worked personally on this, since 2018, we started negotiating. After Hurricane Maria, we gave them a chance to restore the lines and to get back. And they came to us with an amount that I will not disclose, except to say that it was 3 times what we paid for. That's how they started. And we pushed back. And we got advisors on board. And we negotiated over a period of time. And I remember when we came with what I thought was, a pretty reasonable figure. And I called the Minister of Finance and Prime Minister, and he told me, comrade, we have to do better than that. We went back, we made our justification, we made our case, and were able to agree on $5 million US. $5 million US. And more importantly, we were able to pay $1 million on signing. And what you see there, the 2.7 million East Caribbean dollars, that is the payment arrangement that we entered into. So through Treasury notes, we're able to agree to pay twice a year for 2 years to ensure that we cover the remaining $4 million so we can have the 52% of the shares which were owned by Emera. Now, that has helped me tremendously as the one who's been pushing our geothermal project. It means that it's easier for us to settle an agreement for the purchase of the power, which will be produced in the Roseau Valley, to get throughout Dominica. It gives us more breathing space during the surge in fuel prices, that we're able to take action without having to negotiate any position with Emera, and everybody in Dominica has benefited from that. That's the kind of things we are approving here. These are the investments that we're making. And we could not put this on the budget, my friend. We could not, because we did not know when we were going to conclude negotiations. And we did not know what would have been the final amount under the negotiations, and therefore could not have made provisions for it. So we were able to do this for the people of Dominica. And I'm very happy that I was able to play my small part in the process. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the leader of the opposition, as I said, and it's refreshing, I must say. I don't know for those of you on our side, but I find this very refreshing. You come here, you see young people trying and, taking a shot at this, and it was good. The spirit was good as well. I find the exchanges were good, taken in good spirits, here and there. But the leader of the opposition, a member for Salisbury constituency, criticized us for abandoning the farmers in Salisbury constituency. I'm sorry to say, but that is not so. The facts don't agree with you.
10 more minutes. 10 more minutes.
Thank you. It's not me, but the facts don't agree with you. Because I know for a fact, and the Minister of Agriculture mentioned, that we invested $2 million from our own money in Timakushi Road. Now, I know the area. I'm from St. Joe. I know the area. I was Minister of Agriculture. I remember going there. And I know we'd spent money there before, and we spent money there, and we spent money there. I just hope that this time around we can do something different, because that area has some serious challenges. And that was invested in the first quarter of 2020, $2 million from our local funds. But more importantly, around 2018, under the BAM, $8 million went into the Mon to Oja Road. $8 million. Now, we are investing right now 2.8 in the Cowham Road. Now, the Cowham Road also benefits Salisbury farmers. We are one when it comes to our agriculture. We pass up, you go Cuba Road, you pass up, you go, we know the road collapsed at some point, and we are now investing another 2.8 million. Now that road, I don't know. We really have to look at it seriously because some good money passed there, Pat. Good money passed there. Since my time, I know we put money there. 4.8. Oh, sorry, 4.8, not 2.8. Sorry, 4.8. That's a big difference. We invested money there. When Kelva was there, we invested money. So we have been investing on that road over the years, and it also is to benefit the farmers in the Salisbury constituency. But I just heard from my good friend that they are now looking at investing about $500,000 in irrigation system improving the irrigation system for your farmers. So you need to run on to Salisbury and find out what is going on, because the rock vegetable farmers, their irrigation system will be upgraded to ensure that the 40 of them can benefit more. So we are helping the farmers in the Salisbury constituency. Don't be misled and don't do like those before you, who came here to make deba rather than representing the interests of their people. So I think it is very important that you know what is going on. But Mr. Speaker, I want to say a few words on electoral reform. Because I don't know, that one I just hate. First of all, I never liked the term reform. Because you always feel as if a thing mash up. It is broken beyond repair, and you have to come with some reform to just transform it, to fix it, because it was so bad. The allegations that have been made, election after elections, have never been substantiated, even after 25 election petitions. After every election since 2005. And after having had observer missions from the most reputable and even those who were not friendly with us come to Dominica from 2009 on the invitation of our Prime Minister for every election, and have concluded that the elections represented the will of the people. Free and fair elections. What they have done is to highlight some areas where we can improve. And it's not because the thing is broken, not dead people voting. Where we get this nonsense from? Well, I'm glad you have made it clear that you're not in that. I mean, we are not trying to fix a broken system. What we are seeking to do is to modernize the system. And I totally agree with our Prime Minister when he said that we have gotten the report from Sir Dennis Byron. We will take the report to the people, and the people will determine what the system should look like. I agree with that. Because we are giving the world the impression. I had to go to the OAS, and you remember that. You've seen the video. You saw the fellows who were attacking me. And don't worry with them, you know. I was ambassador, now I come back as foreign minister. I go in America behind them, you know. I know them. I know all of them. I know all of them. Because I always wanted to lodge a complaint. Because these are the guys who went to the OAS and sought to destroy Dominica's name and attack me personally. I'll not tell you what the things they said to me. But I myself is from Backstreet St. Drive from, so myself don't afraid nobody. But the fellows come talking and giving the world the impression that we're still in elections. As if dead people voting and fellas doing all sorts of funny things. And that's absolute nonsense. So I never agreed with this reform. We need to modernize the system, I agree. Let us please our partners. Let us work with the recommendations they've given us. And let us modernize the system to ensure that we can prevent fraud in the future. Because it's not happening now. To respond to the concerns, well, two people cannot determine an election. But bring them, if you have the cases, bring them. But I'm saying this because I want to give my support, and I hope that as the Prime Minister promised, when we come to the Parliament, we can get this done and over with. Because we need to stop the debate. But I have the feeling that this guy is, it's like the boogeyman. You have to make your children afraid, so when you tell them something, they have to run and hide. You always have to let them believe there's a boogeyman. So I think it is for them their talking point. It is the thing that keeps them relevant. So you can walk around Roseau every Wednesday or whatever it is that they do. It keeps them relevant, so they don't want it. They're asking for it, but they don't want it. Because they know whenever it is done, they have nothing else to talk about. And that is why they keep pushing it. And that's why the investments we've made.
5 more minutes.
Thank you. That's why the investments we've made in modernization of the electoral process is something that we need to remind people of. And then when we get to the parliament to make the changes that will be required to modernize the process, to ensure that we can fall in line with best practices throughout the world, we hope that this will be the end of that debate. Mr. Speaker, in going back to the supplementary estimate, just one thing I want to reference, and that is the $9 million that we invested under the 11th EDF Feeder Road Rehabilitation Program, of which 7.8 million came from grant funding from the EU, and the 1.2 million from local funds. I want to thank the ministries involved because my farmers in the Makato area were able to benefit from that investment. And I can tell you, I mean, I rode really nice. But we have more work to do. As I've said to the minister, we need another almost $500,000 to complete the other side of the road, the other section of the road, to ensure that we have full access to all the land in that area. We have seen what it has done for the farmers, and you could hear from them yourselves when you visit, but we appreciate that investment and look forward to additional amounts so that we can expand farming in the Makato area. Soon we'll be going to the Mopo area to ensure that the farmers on the other side of the ridge would be able to have the same kind of quality access to their facilities. Mr. Speaker, the supplementary appropriation before us today, once again, I just want to say, reflects a responsible government, a government that has not only promised the people of Dominica a reset, but has already been setting the foundation for that reset. A reset that seeks to refocus, re-emphasize, and in some ways to expand some of the work that we've been doing, ensuring that we can continue aggressively with some of the social programs that we have been well known for, but moving forward to ensure that we can bring new attention to some areas of expansion, especially agriculture, value added, fisheries, especially utilizing our vast exclusive economic zones of 200 miles to ensure that we can transform and take full advantage of the opportunities under the blue economy, and to ensure that we can create more opportunities for more Dominicans to improve their lot. I thank you.
Yes, Honorable Prime Minister, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, morning to all. I rise to give an 11-minute contribution to the supplementary appropriations before us. But before I do that, I want to commend the new members on the government side who certainly gave a very good account of themselves. Not only with the articulation, but also with the content of the presentation. And I always lament that there are so many things this government is doing, but our only problem is that we don't boast about it or about them. And I think the people of Dominica certainly have appreciated this. And of course, all my colleagues who are returning, this is their usual contribution to the House, and of course providing guidance to the younger ones. And so I do hope that that tradition will continue, and I have every confidence that it will continue. But as the father of the house and the leader of the Dominican Party, I feel a personal sense of accomplishment because of the quality of candidates that the Dominican Party has been able to attract over successive elections. And so I believe not only is the present of Dominica bright, but the future of Dominica is even brighter with these young people. I also have congratulated the members on the other side, and I do hope that we can work together. This house is a place where we have to research, and if we do not know, we ask a question, and the facts will be given to us. So we have to be cautious and caution against, bringing in things that we hear and not doing our own research and satisfying ourselves that it is what it is. And I've engaged some of them outside of this house and some other things, and so I won't respond to the things that were said, in the effort to guide and to assist in their own development. And just to say to us that when we're in the house, this is the highest authority in the land, where legislation is drafted and etc. And so what we say in the house carries weight, and people take note of it. And this is why in the rules it cautions us against aspersions, imputing improper motives, etc., etc. Because while you have the privileges of protection, those privileges are also constrained insofar as what you say. And so I want to say to all of us that if something is not true, we should not say it. When you went to vote, you were not faithful. And if you were not faithful, you should not say it in the hall because it's not true. And if you're saying that you were faithful, who instilled fear in you? And so we have to be very careful against this. The other thing I want to caution us against is, if we say we're talking about something that is important and serious, a la the Marigot Hospital, for example, be careful about trivializing what we say, or trivializing the importance of the hospital by our use of language, our intonations, our tone. That, that we maybe want to say this thing to satisfy people who are not inside the house. And so I want to caution against this. But Mr. Speaker, when you look at the supplementary appropriations and what these monies were spent on, and taken into context the global realities that we're facing, sometimes people want to forget that this country was hit by a Category 5 hurricane, which impacted 226% of our GDP, which impacted our housing stock to the tune of close to $1 billion, decimated our agriculture, rendered our infrastructure redundant, with a significant percentage of the population, especially in the private sector, out of work because there are no businesses to go to work to. And then 2 years later, 3 years later, you are hit by even a worse disaster, the COVID-19 pandemic, which lingered on to 2021, 2022, and you're still feeling the impacts of it. And while you're seeing some positive movements in 2022, say with revenues, etc., then here comes the Russia-Ukraine war. That has caused a significant challenge to every country in the world. So you have a compounded situation. We couldn't stop COVID, and we can't stop the Russia-Ukraine war. So every country in the world now is concerned about a recession, because they thought that with the winter season coming in, that the war would have subsided. But that's when people are digging in. It's getting even more intense. And the situation that's confronting the world is getting even more precarious, more challenging, more difficult. And so when you look at what we're doing in this country, it is almost, in a sense, magical. Magical. That notwithstanding all of these challenges, this government did not send one person home. This government did not tell the people who need housing, my brothers and sisters, well, COVID there, Russia-Ukraine war, no more homes. We did not tell the many people who are creating opportunity for themselves with small business support, that it is not the government's responsibility to provide funding to any small business owner. We didn't tell the hundreds of fishermen who got boats and outboard motors, go and take a twine and a hook and go on the rock and fish. No, we gave them boats. We gave them outboard motors. We didn't tell the private sector that nowhere in the world a government pays the salaries for private sector employees. But in the difficult times, we provided monies to the private sector to pay their staff. Because the principal position of the Democratic Labour Party is that we must always, at every opportunity, maintain the dignity of a human being, especially the head of the household, to be able to bring something home to the family and to take care of his children. And the list goes on, Mr. Speaker. I heard the senator speak about cocoa. And if I were the one assisting him with drafting his comments, I would say, why don't you, if you say you're a professional, you're coming to look at things differently, you could have angled your contribution differently. You could come here and boast about the fact that you are a cocoa farmer. You are doing a number of great things where cocoa is concerned, and urging the rest of Dominicans to engage themselves in the planting and the growing of cocoa. That's what it is. Because, Mr. Speaker, the importation of a significant number of cocoa beans is an indication that more people have gone into the processing of cocoa in Dominica and adding value to it, to the point where we cannot supply the domestic demand, and therefore we have to import to supplement the domestic demand. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you people making money in cocoa. No pun intended, Mr. Speaker. People making money. But hear this, in the last 3 years, the government distributed to farmers at highly subsidized prices, and in some cases free of cost, over 20,000 cocoa seedlings. Over 20,000 cocoa seedlings. And the private sector entities who are involved in the propagation of cocoa plants, they sold 12,500 cocoa seedlings in the last 3 years, making for over 33,000 cocoa seedlings And my understanding from the agricultural experts, Mr. Speaker, you have to plant it 12 by 12. Well, I don't plant things 12 by 12 and 20 by 25. I don't have land for that. So I plant 5 by 5 and 8 by 8 and 5 by 8, etc. Maximize the use of the land. You prune. So if you go to what the Ministry of Agriculture is suggesting, 12 by 12, and you have about 300 or so cocoa plants per acre, understand how many acreage, how many acres of land that we have developed with cocoa. But on top of that, Senator Douglas, the Ministry of Agriculture has also assisted with the improvement to existing cocoa farms, 75 acres of existing cocoa farms, to go in there, to clean the lands, to clean the trees, remove the vines from them, prune them, fertilize them. Support to farmers. And we are continuing to make even additional investments in cocoa because we understand the importance of it to the economy and to many rural enterprises, cottage industries, young people who are involved in it, and who are doing tremendous work where cocoa is concerned. We talk about citrus, Mr. Speaker. The Ministry of Agriculture is revolutionizing, they're pushing even more with provision of plants. I just bought, they sell to me, Mr. Speaker, yes? I just bought 75 seedless lime to plant. 75. I wanted more, but they couldn't give me more for me to plant, to add to what I have. And when you look at the investments here in agriculture, I mean, this is extraordinary, the productive sector. 8 million by there, Mr. Speaker, 5 million by there, $5.5 million. Significant investments in agriculture. Ensuring for food security, empowerment, especially the rural economy. Providing people with direct support, Mr. Speaker. And when you look at COVID, Mr. Speaker, just in these supplementary estimates, we're talking about $25 million to fight COVID. $25 million by way of supplementary appropriation. And so when people come and talk about, well, you should have planned this thing, you should budget, but what do I do when the Ministry of Health say, well, we need more testing kits, or we need more doctors to go at the Portsmouth facility, or we have increased the number of patients and therefore we need more people to cook and to provide meals? Do I tell them, well, let's wait, let's say that is say in January. Do I tell them, well, wait for July? Do we say wait to July? The budget is in July, so my brother, I mean, wait, who die? It can't be that. And so, Mr. Speaker, when the money comes, the government is going to leave it in the bank when people need it. We spend it. And as the Minister of Foreign Affairs indicated, some of these funds are grant funding. And sometimes they may be slow in coming, or maybe late in coming. And so when they come, we grab it and we spend it. So it can help the economy. So if we come in there to be informed and to be educated and to engage in a dialogue, let's ask the question and not cast aspersions. Let us not come here with self-fulfilling prophecies. This is not where we're here to fulfill the prophecies of the people who are out there, not there. And if we come in to speak about ourselves, the rules require us to declare that. This is not calypso, don't mask it. Don't mask it, Mr. Speaker. And so, this money is well spent, and we are excited about this, Mr. Speaker. We talk about housing. tremendous sums of money spent on housing, improving the circumstance of people. And when questions have been asked about local contractors, all of these homes are being built by local contractors. Would somebody always want to make more money? I agree with them. I agree. The more you can make in a project is better for the contractor. I agree. But we can't pretend that a fact which exists doesn't exist. And so it would have been better if one would say, well, that project I believe should have been given to a Dominican. This project should have been given to a Dominican, and then we can explain to you as to maybe why a Dominican did not get it. But to put a net over the entire thing and not categorizing them is not a fair approach to take, Mr. Speaker. Now, on the issue of electoral reform, there's not much I should say. The Minister of Foreign Affairs has indicated our position. I spoke yesterday. His firm commitment on this. I'm hoping that very soon, once we get the report from the commissioner, I can sit with the leader of the opposition and we can agree this is what we should go into Parliament with. And then I'm hoping that you could join me in the public consultations, presenting a joint parliamentary position on where we believe electoral reform should come. But I want to say to some people out there who say, well, Scary say he going because electoral reform coming. Because he's afraid of electoral reform. I am telling them that they don't want to challenge me, you know. Because I only need just two of them to challenge me and say, Scary, stay for the next election. Just two of them I want you to tell me, Scary, if you man, stay for the next election. And I will stay. And I will stay. Because whether electoral modernization or not, we all know that Labour will still be the best choice in the. You understand? And I see my friend of long time, member of Parliament Mary got smiling there, in information, you know. You see what I'm saying? Because you always say you're a Labour man. You see what I'm saying? But we're all friends in there. Whether you're a Labour man or you're independent, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The point I'm making is that we'll work with you. You understand? We'll work with you to continue to help bring development to the Marigot people. And somebody referenced about housing for Marigot. So far spent and ongoing in Marigot, where housing is concerned, for the last 2 years, is over $7.4 million. And I can give you names of beneficiaries, whether it's for the eradication of pit latrine, whether it's for repairs of homes or new homes. I can get to you, because I gave that response to the former PAL rep last year in the budget response, how much we spent in Marigot and spending. So if we don't spend time in Marigot, and it's only passing through when we go to the airport or back from the airport, then ask me a question about Marigot now. Senator Thomas, ask me, I'm Henderson, ask me a question, I'll tell you. We're spending money inside there, and we'll continue to spend, because Marigot, like every other else, is part of Dominica. It's part of Dominica. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to do what we have to do for this country, notwithstanding the challenge and difficult times that we live in. The imported inflation that we have to confront on a daily basis. And what we have done to help cushion the impact on the people of Dominica. It's not easy. Just imagine you run your little business. Just imagine you run your little farm. Just imagine you have 5 people employed. and they share challenges. Far more to run a country which doesn't have natural resources outside of its people. But no one can contest, Mr. Speaker, that this government has delivered and continues to deliver for the people of Dominica. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, people are going to the aid bank in droves to get monies from the $27 million that we have there. So far, Mr. Speaker, over $10 million have been loaned out to people. There are some who believe that they can just go by the aid bank and say, I come for money. Or don't fill the forms. Or don't bring the invoices. That's not how a bank operates. So to say I go there and they don't give me, because you didn't have all the documents. Senator from Salisbury, you didn't have all the documents. When you have all the documents, you satisfy the requirements, bam, approved. Check in your hand. Check in your hand. But you can't just go there, I want money, I come for money. Scary say they have money there and let you get money. This is not how it's done. You have to go in there, have an interview, fill a form, documents, their checklist, and you submit that, and the loans officer go for it, they see whether you can pay, they see whether you are owing too many people that you cannot pay them, all of these things that they do. But the money is there to help people build small businesses. My friend from the Pebush constituency spoke about the number of agro-processors in the country and what they do. And so we have to move away in this country from this culture of negativism and start highlighting the positive that we see among us, while we seek to address the concerns that we may have. This is what it is supposed to be. And this is what I hope in this new dispensation, that we will engage ourselves in those conversations. There are many things I could respond to, I said. But I had the opportunity last night at dinner to speak to some of those issues with my colleagues on the other side, and I will adopt that approach going forward. So that if you want to be educated, I can assume that you want to be, if you want to be educated, I am at your disposal to be engaged. But we have to caution ourselves that we don't bring with us this preconceived animosity that remains underlying within our psyche, and then it comes up. My final advice, because I said I'm speaking for 11 minutes, it's 10 minutes now. So I will end in this, Mr. Speaker. That in this business of public office, every one of us will have people who will write for us and advise and so on. But at the end of the day, it is you who will be delivering it. And therefore, let your conscience guide you as to, are the people using you to push their agenda, or are they helping you develop yourself? So my caution to you on the other side, and I'm saying so the greatest sense of sincerity, I have nothing to gain by it, honestly, personally. Because people know me. I can stand and defend myself and defend this government anywhere in the world. Not in Liquid Dominica, I can do it. Do not allow people who have an entrenched sense of animosity, hatred, and a disgust of our country to use you as a proxy. Without fear or favor, affection or ill will. Without fear or favor, affection or ill will. And so let all of us be guided by our consciences and the reason why we're here. And finally, on this is why I cautioned there, because I cautioned Senator Paris about this notion that who knows he was not faithful of voting. And I believe it's important for you, and Minister of Foreign Affairs indicated that. I want to repeat it. It's important for you to say for yourselves whether elections were free and fair in Dominica, whether elections were carried out legally and constitutionally in Dominica. Because if you say no, as far as the lawyers tell me, that if you benefit from stolen goods, you get a higher charge. You get a higher charge. If you're in receipt of stolen goods, you get a higher charge. So be careful what you say, because it will be reflected upon you. Senator, the Honorable Sean, you have all the names, also Sean? We like you must have many names. I mean, come on, come here with Sean. You must have some, Williamson or something. But so I'm here in a cordial spirit and so on. I can tell you with the greatest sense of sincerity, I have nothing personal against any one of you. I don't even know some of you before yesterday. And as I'm saying, but I want to embrace you because we're all in this parliament together doing the business of Dominica. That's all I'm offering to you. So you either choose to extend your hand to my extended hand or keep your hands in your pocket. It's your choice. And I am prepared to use the 23 years I am here to also share with you my experiences so that you can build yourself if you truly have an interest in serving the people of this country diligently, dutifully, and to the best of your abilities. And I do hope that we can all release ourselves with any negative spirit or anything like this and come here with smiles, not to look vexed, because those who used to be vexed on the other side, the wind have taken them away. And come back, they shall not. They shall not. So while you're here, let us all have a different attitude and aptitude. Let us bring back the days when Earl Williams was there as leader of the opposition, when Mr. Edison James was there as leader of the opposition, that we could banter each other, but we go out there and talk and joke, and we go upstairs and have dinner. The last 8 years was not that. It was one of acrimony and all of the negatives. But the Lord, as I said, always works in mysterious ways. And so he has moved that out. And he has appointed you to have a different attitude and a different approach to this. Because if you maintain that which was there before, you will not survive. You will not survive. And so, take it as you wish, but also say this is sincere advice even to you and to all of us in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I just rise to conclude on our debate session. I must confess, we had a very interactive session, both sides of the House. Their contributions, their deliberations, well taken and in good spirit as well. My job is very easier today, this morning, Mr. Speaker, this afternoon actually, because I think all the members have expressed the more important and salient features in this supplementary appropriation bill. But I still want to just touch on a few of them, just to elaborate on a few points. But first, when we talk about this supplementary appropriation, we have to contextualize things and we have to see the time that this comes in. And it is important to recognize that this government has never been a government of loans, so to speak, because in previous years, the supplementary appropriations, for instance, in 2016 to 2017, 0% were loans in the supplementary appropriation. And then came Maria in 2017, so from 2017 to 2018, only 6% was loans. And 2018 to 2019, 0% again was loans. If we go from 2019 to 2020, Mr. Speaker, only 3% of the supplementary appropriations were loans. What I'm getting at is most of these funds are from local sources and from grants. And as was mentioned before, obviously you're getting grants if you have a certain reputation in the international organizations. But in 2020-21, it actually even was just 1% of the supplementary appropriation came from loans. So what this is telling you is that all along, it's basically grant and local sources for funding the supplementary appropriations. And even after COVID and with the war in Ukraine, we're coming this year, 2021, 2022, and only 13% is loans. So this just tells you how responsible this government has been in terms of raising funds and in terms of using the funds wisely to address the needs of the people of Dominica. Mr. Speaker, and you have to look at it, there are countries, they never had Maria. And when COVID came, they were crying and they were complaining, and you could see the hardship in those countries. We had Maria, and in spite of this, we could still manage to be one of the best to have handled COVID in the region and the world, in spite of Maria. So, and countries that they never had a Maria and they could even function under COVID. So you have to look at, in spite of all these shocks that we keep getting, these exogenous shocks, whether it's climate events, etc., we still manage to be a responsible government and still manage to provide for the people. And in all of these supplementary appropriations that we've been dealing with for the past, well, yesterday and today, resilience is an important part in all of these different measures, in all the different sectors that we've mentioned. Whether it's financial resilience, the fiscal resilience, you saw how the investments in the DOMLEC as well as the investments into the NBD. But the thing about the NBD, Mr. Speaker, the bank tells you how many allocations you have to get for it to maintain a certain percentage of shares. The bank did tell us as a government, we got our shares. So if the other stakeholders are not getting their shares accordingly for their percentages, that is why Honorable Pinard was explaining the little fluctuation that can be present. But we were responsible enough, and we did get the shares that we were supposed to get so that we can maintain our percentage. And that was just responsible government as well. Also, the investment in DOMLEC brings us to the same point. And let alone all of these other things here, in terms of the due diligence, the funds in the appropriation that is paid for due diligence for our CBI program is very important. That is money well spent. Because obviously you have to be judged on the different criteria for us to remain number one in the CBI index. And this is an important part of being ranked number one every time, our due diligence. So money spent on due diligence is money well spent, because that is what continues our CBI program, that is what continues our rating, and that is one of our main bread earners in this country. These are some of the local resources, the local funds that we're talking about, which is funding all these different measures in the supplementary appropriation bill that we brought here yesterday. And so, and let alone the fiscal resilience that we're talking about, it's all about the money that is being spent, Mr. Speaker, that is in the productive sector as well. You heard the Minister of Agriculture when he mentioned the amount of money being spent on feeder roads to give us access to agricultural land. We amount $5 million in terms of tools and equipment. In terms of the agricultural science building, all about having species that are more resistant and the productivity, increasing the productivity. So all of this goes in terms of the productive sector. So it's not just something you're doing now to remedy something now, these are the seeds that have been planted and the fruits we shall reap 5-10 years down the line. So that is a forward thinking and a proactive government, and this is what all these measures in this supplementary appropriation is dealing with. Let alone resilience, in the fiscal resilience and addition into the productive sector, all the different measures there, these are things that address people's quality of life as well, Mr. Speaker. When we look at all the different measures, the funds being spent for Yes We Care. This is for elderly citizens. This is a government that concerns about the people. We have the people at heart. This is a caring government. So funds being spent here in the supplementary appropriation for things like the Yes We Care, even for the people living with disabilities. It's riddled all in the supplementary appropriation. What about all the different funds we're spending on youth and the funds we're spending on streamlining gender? Also, all the funds being spent on the NEPs, not just a matter of cleaning up the area. These people, they're dignified now. They have a job. They provide for their families. So it's more than just resilience in the other areas, but it's also providing quality of life and comfort for our people. Look at housing. That is how you empower people. Proper housing. And in terms of the housing and the contractors for housing, for instance, in my constituency in Trafalgar, we have another 16 units that we're building. All the contractors are from the Roseau Valley. 2 from Mount Prosper, 2 from Wharton Waverton, we have 1 from Trafalgar, 1 from Shawford, and all that stays within the constituency. All the contractors are pretty happy, and it's all people from the constituency are working on those projects, Mr. Speaker. So this is just how the money gets trickled down to the common man in terms of the employment from even the housing program. Besides providing, climate resilient housing for the people and catering for the people, but it also brings food on the table for the very same people. We can go a little further in terms of security, even in the appropriation bill here. The amount of money we're spending from the Ministry of National Security, that is to provide safety and comfort for our people. This is how we spend in all these monies to provide for the quality of life for the people of Dominica. So there's a bigger picture in terms of spending in the productive sector. There's also spending into our fiscal resilience, but it's also just trickling down to the quality of the common man in Dominica. Mr. Speaker, in terms of education, we see all the CRRP plus the 1.8 million spent on repairing the schools. We see the money being spent on curriculum development. We see the money being spent on training teachers, and all that is just building capacity, and all that is just preparing for the future. As a matter of fact, we are now engaging UNICEF in terms of redesigning and transforming our education system. So we keep doing it, and that is because we are a pragmatic government. We do something, and if we see we can do it better and we can adjust to make it better, then we be very pragmatic in our approach and we adjust accordingly. So this is why with our pragmatism as a government, you will always get all these different things riddled in the supplementary appropriation bill that we're discussing. So everything is connected. For instance, health, Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister clearly explained, someone is sick, you have to deal with someone. You cannot wait for a budget to deal with someone. But in terms of the Marigot Hospital, we've been adjusting things actually from scratch. We've been changing things within the Marigot Hospital just to make sure that we get a really perfect and the state-of-the-art hospital that we want for the people of that region. And not just that region, for the entire country, because we all pass and travel through the Marigot region. And then one of the little delays was in terms of getting all the equipment. Remember when the war in Ukraine started and we had the logistics of shipping, etc. So actually 8 containers of equipment, that was the delay. That was one of the delays why we couldn't get the equipment on time. Eventually the equipment did come on time, and then when we were discussing with the vendors as to get the technical people and the biomedical engineers to come and mount up the stuff for us, that has been one of the little delays. But what we're going to do with this particular hospital, it's going to be maybe one of the first of its kind in the region, in the sense that we have a primary care aspect attached to a tertiary care aspect. So it's an area you can go in the day and you can get all the different services, whether it's dental, whether it's pharmacy, whether it's lab, etc., which has a primary care component, which will actually feed into the tertiary care. But that will be one of the first of its kind in the region. So it's something we want to do properly, and we're not going to just open for opening's sake. It has to be done properly. So that is the little delay, and obviously it will be done shortly. We're in contact with the vendors and the technical people and the biomedical engineer. We'll be coming down so that they can set up all the equipment, and we can have a full-fledged hospital working both primary, both tertiary, and that's one of the first of its kind in the region. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, Mr. Speaker. That is well on its way, and that will be done as well. Then if we were to go a little further, even all the different money in this supplementary appropriation that's spent on the surveys. As a matter of fact, some of our SDGs, in some of them, one of the issues was we had a lack of information. And that is where the money being spent in the digital economy will help in getting the data to actually first to assess 8 of these SDGs that we're lacking in. And that is all the money being spent in the population survey, which is always going to feed that information so we can address our SDGs in a more appropriate way. And so you have to look at the broader picture of how things have been, how money is being spent in the supplementary appropriation, all towards fiscal resilience, all towards people's quality of life, all towards looking at the future and the productive sector. So it's many things being put together, Mr. Speaker, but it is important to note that all the funds for the supplementary appropriation, most of it is from local sources and from grant sources. So it's not a matter of loan. We've never been a government of just taking loans all the time, every time. And so when you look at all of this, Mr. Speaker, I think we should be very proud of how we've managed this amount of money and how we put back all of this money into the welfare and into the empowerment and the building of our country and the people in general. Having said all of this, Mr. Speaker, I think we should definitely be very happy. Let me thank all the members on both sides who contributed to the discussion here, the deliberations. And that being said, I think we can proceed. And we should feel comfortable that this was money well spent for Dominica and for the people of Dominica.
This concludes the debate on the supplementary estimates. The supplementary estimate shall now be referred to a committee of supply of the whole House. House is in committee. Head D21, which is Office of the President. The question is that House resume. I have to report that the supplementary estimate have passed through the Committee of Supply of the whole House without amendments. So first now, the question now before we pass. The question is that the estimate for $235,717,376.20 be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Supplementary estimate has been approved.
Bill shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022, Act 2023, be read a first time.
Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022, Act 2023.
The bill has been read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022, Act 2023.
Do it again. No. Put it on. Yes.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I commend the supplementary appropriation bill to the House.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022 Act 2023 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Supplementary Appropriation.
Just the second time. Which one?
Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022, Act 2023.
I move that the bill shortly entitled Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022 Act 2023 be read a third time and passed.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, say it.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Yes, sir.
Supplementary Appropriation 2021-2022, Act 2023.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House be suspended until 2:30 this afternoon.
Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be suspended until 2:30 this afternoon. Those in favor? Those against? House stand suspended until 2:30 p.m.